China just shut down car factories, crashed supply chains, and panicked governments worldwide without a single shot fired. No war, just 3 words on a government document, and 99% of people have no idea it happened. Here's what they're not telling you. Before we get into what happened, you need to understand something most people don't. China doesn't just make cheap stuff. That story is decades old. The real story, the one that actually matters, is that China controls the building blocks of the modern world. I'm talking about rare earth elements. Sounds boring. Stay with me. Rare earths are a group of 17 minerals with names you can't pronounce. Neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, yttrium. They're in everything. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, smartphones, fighter jets, missile guidance systems, MRI machines, semiconductors. You literally cannot build the future without them. And here's the number that should stop you cold. For a remarkable 19 out of 20 important strategic minerals, China is the leading refiner with an average market share of 70%. 19 out of 20. China accounts for approximately 60% of global rare earth raw material production, processes about 85% of the world's output, manufactures nearly 90% of the world's rare earth magnets, and controls nearly all the refining capacity for heavy rare earth elements such as dysprosium and terbium. Let me put that in plain English. Almost everything that powers the green energy revolution, the AI revolution, and the defense industry runs through China. And in 2025, China decided to use that power as a weapon. Here's what happened, and the timeline matters. It started with tariffs. The U.S. under Trump hit China with massive import duties, total tariff rates reaching up to 145% on Chinese imports. China responded in the way everyone expected, retaliatory tariffs. That's the trade war playbook, tit for tat. But then China did something nobody fully expected. In April 2025, China's Ministry of Commerce mandated national security-based export licenses for 7 rare earth elements: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium, and yttrium. Exporters halted shipments overnight as they awaited approvals. Overnight. Shipments stopped. Export data from May 2025 shows that China's total exports of rare earth magnets fell by 74% year over year, the lowest level since February 2020 during COVID. The U.S.-specific decline was even higher, with shipments of rare earth magnets to the U.S. plummeting by 93.3% year on year. 93% gone in 1 month. As export volumes fell sharply in April and May, many car makers in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere struggled to obtain permanent magnets, with some forced to cut utilization rates or even temporarily shut down factories. Car factories shutting down because of minerals most people have never heard of. And then in October 2025, China escalated again. The scope was expanded to include 5 additional heavy rare earth elements: holmium, erbium, thulium, europium, and ytterbium. The new rules meant that any product containing Chinese rare earths or produced using Chinese processing technology could fall under Beijing's discretionary licensing authority. Any product, anywhere in the world, that used Chinese rare earths or Chinese technology. China had just extended its reach beyond its own borders. When supply drops 93% overnight and demand stays the same, you know what happens to prices. Even after trade volumes recovered, rare earth prices in importing countries remained elevated, with European prices reaching up to 6 times those in China, hurting the cost competitiveness of rare earth-based products manufactured outside China. 6 times the price of the same mineral, 6 times higher outside China than inside it. That's not a price difference. That's a weapon. China controls approximately 90% of global rare earth processing. Export controls introduced in 2025 to 2026 triggered price spikes of up to 6-fold outside China, while licensing approvals for European firms fell below 25% in some sectors. Less than 1 in 4 applications approved. Economists from the European Central Bank estimated that over 80% of large European firms are no more than 3 intermediaries away from a Chinese rare earth producer. 3 steps away. That's how thin the margin between normal operations and crisis really is. And here is the most important insight from everything I've researched for this video. China is not weaponizing scarcity. It is weaponizing control. By tightening and loosening access and cycles, Beijing maintains pricing power, extracts strategic concessions, and slows the development of competing supply chains. Read that again. China doesn't need to cut off supply permanently. It just needs to turn the tap on and off unpredictably to keep the whole world dependent and off balance. That's genius-level economic strategy, and it's been hiding in plain sight for decades. Now let's zoom out, because the rare earth story is just one piece of a much larger economic earthquake that China triggered. The trade war between the U.S. and China didn't just affect those two countries, it shook the entire global supply chain. The decline in U.S.-China trade reduced global trade growth by about 10% during 2025, with reduced U.S. imports from China accounting for roughly 85% of that decrease. 10% of all global trade growth gone. U.S. tariffs averaged 13.7% in early 2026, still high enough to push companies to redesign their supply chains. About 25% of global iPhone production has already moved to India, while Vietnam now handles most U.S.-bound Apple devices. Apple incurred around $900 million in tariff-related costs. Apple, one of the most valuable companies in history, scrambling to move factories because of China's leverage. Twice in 2025, China nearly brought the U.S. automobile industry to a screeching halt by cutting off companies' access to essential Chinese inputs. With nearly 6.5% of U.S. manufacturing workers employed in just-in-time automotive supply chains, the economic disruption could have been traumatic. Nearly brought the U.S. auto industry to a halt. Twice. And consumers. They felt it too. U.S. consumers bore costs amounting to about $1,000 per household in 2025 to 2026 from tariff-related price increases. $1,000 per household. That's not abstract economics. That's your grocery bill, your electronics, your car